Superman. The big blue Boy Scout with the design so perfect it's hardly undergone any changes over his 88-year history outside of Injustice, but that was a war crime so we don't talk about it. Because of how greedy the Man of Steel is, we've been blessed with decades of different Superman adaptations that vastly vary in quality, but who cares about any of that? Today, we're here to talk about what really matters, the costume. Despite how iconic those spandex are, every single version of Superman has put their own spin on it, for better or for worse. And since David's suit got an upgrade for Man of Tomorrow, it's got me thinking about who has the best Superman costume of all time. So since I got nothing else better to do, I figured I was going to rank every single live-action suit, because surely that's never been a controversial topic. Hell, I'll even throw Supergirl in there too. I just have to apologize in advance for how many times you're about to hear me talk about these same 3 features over and over again, but you knew what you were getting into clicking on this video. It's only right we start with the first ever live-action Superman, Kirk Alyn. He was given the honor of bringing the last son of Krypton to life all the way back in 1948 in the original Superman serial, where he fought classic villains like Lex Luthor and the Spider Lady. Wait, who's that? Doesn't matter. What does matter is that the poster for his first serial oddly has him in this red and gray costume, which I spent hours of my life trying to find an answer for, but the only person who could tell me why he's drawn like that either wouldn't answer my calls or died. It doesn't really matter though, because when you're looking at the costume in the series itself, they forgot to add all the colors. Did nobody tell them they were supposed to make it blue and red? I mean, for that alone, easy F tier. It's crazy they made everything so desaturated. That being said, I do like the little sweater cuffs. This guy over here gets it. They also forgot to add color at the start, but at least someone wised them up to it. George Reeves played the Man of Tomorrow in The Adventures of Superman, along with Superman and the Mole Men, one of the funniest titles ever, and if DC weren't cowards, they'd bring these silly little guys back already. It's always really interesting to go back and look at how these older adaptations handled the costume, because that's literally just a shirt and pants. It's the most homemade a Superman suit has ever looked, to the point where you can actually see the stitching on the chest, so good on Ma Kent for that. Admittedly, there is a certain charm to that kind of aesthetic, and they pretty much nailed the overall structure of the costume, but I don't love how narrow the logo is on the chest. It just looks so squished that I simply can't get over that, but they did their best for the time. And hey, that's probably the most comfortable Superman costume, so it gets a respectable B tier for that alone. Ooh, here's a fun one. Christopher Reeve set the standard for not just Superman, but the entire comic book movie genre as a whole. He brought so much charisma and warmth to the character that it made it feel like Superman was real. Just look at this picture and tell me he isn't. You can't. Mostly because I can't hear you. In terms of looking the part, I don't know if anyone ever has more than him. It's like you shook a Superman comic and he fell right out of it. Besides his dashing good looks, that costume did wonders bringing the character to life. It's even more impressive because with this suit basically being nothing more than a simple fabric, it shouldn't work, but goddamn it does. The colors are perfect. The trunks are spot on. It fits him like any glove that isn't O.J. Simpson's. The logo is big and shaped to perfection, and they even have the yellow S on the back of the cape. I have no notes for this. It's a perfect costume that translated something into live action in ways that had never been done before and set the gold standard for how superheroes should look on the big screen. There's just something magical about this whole look that feels right. When I look at Reeve, I only ever see Superman. It's gonna be so hard to beat this. I'm genuinely curious to see if any of the costumes do. I say as if I don't have this whole thing scripted out. I know that it does get dethroned. Ooh, foreshadowing. But that is an easy S tier all day long. And you know what? I'm gonna throw the Superboy costume in here in spirit as well, because it's basically the same suit and none of you remembered it existed until I just mentioned it. Hey, here comes our first Supergirl of the bunch. Helen Slater only got to play Supergirl once, because it's all better if we just pretend the Flash's ghoulish appearance never happened. Thankfully, when she's actually real in a movie, her costume looks great. It's pretty much everything I said about the Reeves suit, but for Supergirl. I even love all the yellow accents that really pop on screen. The whole look feels complete. Special shout out to how the belt and skirt look as well. They're pretty much perfect and do a lot to give her a unique identity away from Superman. Although I would like to see if Reeve could pull off the skirt. If I had to change anything, I'd like the material to be a little less cloth-like and for the cape to be longer, but that's just me nitpicking and trying to fill the time because I don't have much to say about this look. We can just throw it in the A tier and move on to the next one. Oh god, Dean Cain is next. Never mind, can we go back to Supergirl? No? Okay. Dang it. It's honestly crazy that somebody could play Superman and then be the antithesis of everything he represents, but whatever. This is about his costume. It's pretty similar to what we've seen before. I'm pretty sure this is the only material that existed up until the 2000s, but Lois and Clark, The New Adventures of Superman, and that long-ass title made their own little tweaks to the costume. Unfortunately, I don't like mostly any of them. The deeper navy blue they went with irritates me. I got beef with this specific shade of blue apparently. The trunks are close to working, but they taper off too much at the bottom to the point where it looks like a speedo speedo, and the rectangular belt buckle is underwhelming. It adds nothing but a little bit of texture and barely stands out. Also, the boots don't match the costume, so that's not great either. The main draw of this costume to me is the massive logo. I am a big symbol enthusiast all the way. That being said, I think this one is just a tad too big for me. Maybe it's just how high up on the costume it is that looks awkward. If you lower it a bit, I think it would look better. But what's something nice I can say? I don't know. I like the gold logo on the back of the cape. That's something. Listen, I don't love the costume or the person wearing it, but Cain did get to bring the first ever black suit to life in live action, so that's something. It's marginally better than this costume. I even like the blue on the black a lot more than I'd expect, even if the belt is still pointless and the lack of a cape is almost as upsetting as the fact that Dean Cain is in the costume. I know the costume in the comics doesn't have a cape, but this one specifically looks so awkward without it. So I guess it just goes in C tier because it's still recognizably Superman, and somehow it gets worse than this. I'll be straight up with you. The Superman Returns costume is the worst Superman has ever looked in live action. And that's including Cavill's weird mustacheless face. I don't know if there's a single thing I like about this costume, genuinely. I guess the shade of blue is pretty good, and the material isn't half bad, but everything else is just bafflingly horrible. It's like they went into the movie with the intention of designing the worst costume of all time. For starters, the logo is just too small, man. It leaves so much empty space on the chest and makes Brandon look like a toddler, as the entire costume feels so vacant. And I really don't love how he has another S logo on the belt buckle. I respect trying something new, but it's definitely overkill to use that same logo twice like that. He's Superman. He doesn't have to go that hard on the branding. But here's the thing. Worst of all, it's not even red. They went with this weird muddy maroon brown color that looks distractingly out of place. The blue and yellow are fully saturated. What are you thinking, only desaturating the red? Whoever made that decision needs to be shot. God, the longer I stare at this suit, the more things I find to dislike about it. Why is the cape made of leather? It's a cape. It doesn't need to be made out of leather, man. The fact that in continuity, this is supposed to be the same Superman as Christopher Reeve makes it even more egregious. I don't know what they were thinking, but it's all bad. It's a shame too, because Brandon Routh could have been the Superman, but instead, they put him in an outfit that's the worst thing about a movie directed by Bryan Singer. If I could make a tier lower than F to put this on, I would, but I already made the template so it's going the lowest spot. You know what? No, I'm remaking this template. He's going in hell tier. Pisses me off so much. Stupid costume makes me unreasonably upset. Ugh, okay, what's next? Please give me something better than that. Okay, Smallville, I know that one, a show infamous for its costume design, or lack thereof, because they just mostly had people in regular clothes that just happened to be the color of the character they were playing, except for Dr. Fate, who they just decided to put the entire budget into, I guess. Smallville ran the motto of no tights, no flight, so that's not exactly a great sign when looking for a Superman costume. Then when Welling finally got a costume in the final scene, it was of course that cursed return suit. God damn it! I don't know if there's a bigger insult in human history than edging people for 10 seasons only to jump scare them with that ugly ass logo. I guess you could say he got costumes like this at one point, but I'm not counting it. That's a t-shirt with a jacket thrown over it. But we aren't talking about that suit anymore, thankfully, because Supergirl actually appeared in Smallville. And her costume, well, I mean, it sure was something. It's a costume, I'll give him that. I mean, not much else can be said about it. It's just normal clothes. They are so close to having something that isn't just the first stage of someone's unfinished cosplay. Even just a logo I would have appreciated, but unfortunately, I fear they were allergic to anything like that, so we're stuck with a shirt and skirt. Riveting stuff, really. Obviously an F-tier costume, although I do feel bad picking on a TV show with an $8 budget trying its best, but it still sucks, and the guy who came up with that shirt rip should be fed to the wolves. Okay, can we please get me something better now that won't get me killed by fans? Oh no. Oh, it's never been more over for me. Henry Cavill is, without a doubt, the most controversial Superman, both in adaptation and design. I feel like everybody either loves him or hates him, while I'm mostly just indifferent as he's the most potential man of all time. He also apparently has the most costumes of all time, as every new appearance saw the suit change, so let me just stop stalling and get to the part where you can send me death threats. I don't like the Man of Steel costume very much. There, I said it. Conceptually, I get it, and on the surface, the costume does look good, but it fails as an adaptation. That being said, there's a lot to like about this costume. The design of his crest is perfect, and I love the size of it on his chest. I wouldn't change a thing about the boots either. They fit this design really well with a great texture that runs across the whole costume. It elevates a simple design and makes it feel alien in a way that works. I really respect how Snyder took a bold swing when designing this costume and how it fits into his specific specific version of the character. But what the hell is happening below the belt? If we can just zoom in uncomfortably close to Henry Cavill's crotch, what are we doing here? This takes the alien inspiration a bit too far for my liking, as they remove the trunks that exist to humanize him in favor of these useless lines that bring the costume down. I'm of the belief that I can't fully support any Superman costume that doesn't have the trunks because of the symbolism and how they break up the colors, so admittedly I'm a little biased here, but this replacement straight up does not work for me. You couldn't even add some kind of belt? Really? We just have these weird guiding lines that are definitely trying something, but the suit would look so much better without them, considering how much it clashes with that beautiful simplicity. And that distracts me more than I'd like to admit. Also, we gotta talk about those colors, man. They are far too desaturated for my liking. He's given Kirk a run for his money. If you just brighten things up a bit, you still have those problems from before, but it genuinely goes a long way in making him feel like the hopeful icon and beacon of positivity he should be. Thankfully, Batman v Superman does improve on that, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. They brighten the blue and red up to a shade that I actually think looks really good. It's just a shame that the color grading of the film makes it look just as dull as Man of Steel at times. But seeing it behind the scenes and on display, God, it looks so much better. Even if they did make it too shiny, I still get Clooney War flashbacks there. At least that meant they were on the right track and making tweaks with every subsequent appearance that got us closer to something I was actually happy with. Take the theatrical cut of Justice League, for example. Terribly ugly movie, but this was the brightest costume with a nice and vibrant blue that I really liked. But unfortunately, they went a little too hard on the muscle airbrushing that it just looks extremely unnatural. That was clearly something built into the previous two costumes in a great way that I took for granted. I do have to give Snyder credit though. I think the black suit looks damn near perfect. The way the silver logo pops on the costume is gorgeous, and my least favorite lines from earlier now add texture rather than distract from the rest of the look. It also really helps that the black suit in the comics doesn't have trunks, so their absence here feels much more natural and the design works without them. The only reason I can't say it's perfect is because they were too cowardly to give him the mullet. You had one shot to do this. The people yearned to see a mullet for Superman, and you blew it. So for that, I can never forgive you. On a much brighter note though, quite literally, Black Adam of all movies briefly changed the hierarchy of power and gave us Cavill's best Superman costume. And I'm not just saying that because he's only shot from the waist up so I can pretend he has the trunks on. The colors here are exactly what I wanted to see from him the entire time. Finally, after 9 years of waiting, they actually made the yellow on the costume yellow. The Rock might be a bald, egotistical maniac, but he finally gave us the correct color scheme, so I guess he survives another day. You still get to keep those unique design choices that come from his Man of Steel look, but the blue is alive with a bright red that complements the whole look really well, and a bold yellow that pops on screen. This is how Cavill should have looked from the beginning, and I can't believe I have Dwayne of all people to thank for it. I might have to take off a star just for that, but here's where all of his suits land. Please don't hurt me too much. I get it's controversial, but I'm not the biggest fan of this template. Alright, with that behind us, we now enter the CW era, which brings with it an overwhelming amount of costumes, starting with Supergirl herself. She's had way more suits than you'd think, including the Nazi one, which is automatically in the F tier. And yes, it is still better than the Return suit, but none more iconic than the skirt suit, brought to life in a genuinely stunning way. Say what you will about the Arrowverse, and trust me, there is a lot to say, but more often than not, the CW's costume department just got it. When it comes to comics, there isn't a superhero who's had more default looks than Supergirl, but when I think about her, it's always been the red skirt. So to see the CW bring that to life in a way that looks good and feels practical is a miracle. The shades of red and blue they chose really work for me, along with the texture that adds tactility to a pretty straightforward design. She feels like a larger-than-life hero in all the right ways. This suit does not get nearly enough appreciation for how spot on it is. My only real critique would be that I don't love the random red lines they throw on there. At the very least, just make them blue for texture purposes, and of course, the crest. I actually do like the idea of Kara having a different logo color scheme than Superman, but the yellow outline is a little too thin and should match the belt rather than be distractingly different. A little change like that would feel so much more cohesive and add a lot to tie the whole look together. Putting aside those nitpicks, it is inarguable that this costume is great, so it definitely belongs in the A tier. I'm not afraid to fight you over this either. I will play dirty, okay? Get ready for pocket sand. I know most people didn't make it past Supergirl Season 2, although I will say that Season 4 was genuinely great, but it's Season 5 I want to focus on when she got the biggest costume change yet.
Pants!
Yes, for the first time ever, they let Supergirl actually wear pants. It is a drastic change from all of her previous looks, but one that I think works a lot more than I was expecting. It also helps knowing that they shot in Vancouver, so I'm glad Melissa didn't have to freeze to death anymore in that skirt. While I do think the pantsuit ultimately works, it also invites the issue every Superman costume without trunks has, breaking up the design in the middle. I do like the gold belt they went with here, but I think you needed to make it dramatically bigger to fix that problem. Oddly, I do really like the metallic logo more than I thought I would, especially with how it ties all the other accents together. I'm not too sure how I feel about the random metal piece above it or all the segments on the sides though. Something about them just seems off to me. Also, brighten up the cape while we're at it, please and thank you. I don't understand why so many adaptations are afraid of vibrant colors. That being said, for the first Supergirl costume with pants, it definitely works. She shouldn't only ever be limited to wearing a skirt, but a few tweaks would improve it a lot and give her a more unique identity, so I'll put it here amidst all the Cavill costumes in the B tier. Oh, also, there's this power armor she had at one point that I want to talk about because we gotta humble the CW a bit. This anti-kryptonite suit is a lot to look at. I do like the concept of a white logo, but the border blending in with the rest of the suit really throws me off. Let alone all the different shades of blue thrown in there seemingly at random. It makes the design feel just a little bit too busy. But more than all of that, it's the helmet I think that really drags this look down for me. It feels so out of place for the rest of this design philosophy here and looks so much better when we can actually see Melissa, which is usually how things go. But it's part of the full look, so I have to deduct some points for that. And the heads-up display. Guys, she's Supergirl. We don't need to make her Iron Man. It's an interesting idea, but basically falls apart completely due to some messy execution. For every banger costume the CW produces, there's always going to be one that reminds you this is still the CW, so I guess this goes in C tier for CW. Now we can get to the real glaze at least, because the CW gifted us with this flawless costume for Brandon Routh's return as Superman during their Crisis event. I don't think there are enough words in the human language to do justice just how much I love this suit. It's all I could have ever wanted from a Superman costume and then some. Let's start with that Kingdom Come inspired crest, because god does it look good. It's the perfect size as it takes up his whole chest with bold, striking colors that stand out against the background. The red and blue they used are so vibrant it could bring me to tears. There's no shying away from him as this bright beacon of hope that cuts through the darkness. They even found a way to modernize the classic spandex look with a texture that feels professional and takes it out of the cosplay territory. I don't know what miracle material that is, but they need to get it in the hands of every costume designer known to man. One thing this suit does really well, and is an underrated feature that other costumes sometimes ignore, is the wide neckline. Something about it feels so classic to me and does a lot to make Routh feel even bigger, letting those straps breathe. They fully embraced the costume from the comics to give us a one-to-one translation that it wouldn't change a single thing about. They weren't trying to change things just for the sake of it. They gave us the Superman look, even down to the trunks. Let's get another zoom in on that package real quick, because they nailed the size and how far to make them go down so they don't look like a Speedo, and instead bring back the strongman sensibility while actually committing to the belt. It's not just some aesthetic choice sewn into the costume, it feels like a real belt that serves a purpose. And they even got the buckle right. It's especially crazy to think about how good this costume is when you take into account the context of when it came out. You gotta remember, they dropped this suit at a time where you get shot for making Superman look this colorful and friendly. And it came from the CW. The same people who made this terrible Red Tornado look made the best Superman costume of all time. Insanity. More than anything, I'm just happy for Brandon Routh. Bringing him back as the Kingdom Come version of Superman was an inspired decision that gave him a chance to prove everybody wrong and finally get a good costume. Although, it is really funny to think that he is both the worst and best Superman costume we've talked about so far. Gotta be the upgrade of the century. This is the easiest S tier I've ever given out in my entire life. Generational costume and one of my favorite of all time. I would make love to that costume if I could. For as much as I love that costume though, the CW may have gifted us with something even better: Tyler Hoechlin's Superman. Seriously, depending on the day, Tyler might be my all-time favorite Superman actor. He made his big debut during the second season of Supergirl and was so beloved that he even got a wonderful series of his own in Superman and Lois, which is especially impressive because his debut costume is not great. I like the texture and the colors, they nailed that at least, but everything else is so close to working that it annoys me how off it all is. For starters, starters, I just can't get behind the cape straps on the shoulders. I kinda get what they're going for, making it look like the cape was draped over the shoulders in a practical way, but it just seems so unnecessary to me and doesn't look cool enough to justify its existence. It's animated, so it's not a one-to-one comparison, but the new suit in My Adventures with Superman Season 3 really nailed this kind of aesthetic and made it look like it was actually part of the cape in a cool way, so I just wish they did something like that. As for the rest of it, the logo is a great size with a picture-perfect classic design. Well, almost, because they throw in these little yellow lines around the outside for some reason. It's certainly something, but my least favorite part of this suit is by far the belt. Already without the trunks, it's gonna be a hard sell, but at least replace it with something that looks cool. Having a red belt that's the same width all around is awkward, doesn't use the space very well whatsoever, and it's too high up in his body. He looks too much like Steve Urkel, and I cannot let that slide for Superman. On the bright side, he did get a black suit variant during one of their many crossovers, which doesn't fix those problems, but it looks infinitely cooler, so I will accept that. Thankfully, he got like a million other costumes, so there are tons of opportunities to fix those mistakes. Superman and Lois does their best, and they have some good ideas, but the execution is interesting. Their Season 1 costume is the template for everything going forward, so let's just start with that as I try and make the same topic interesting for the 15th time. The colors? Good. It's just that the show's color grading hides them. The texture? Not bad, albeit a little unrealistic with the padding. The logo? Absolutely gorgeous. I just wish it wasn't so tiny and there was some dimension to it instead of being sewn into the costume on the same level as the rest of the suit. At the wrong angle, it could look like something you'd get from Party City. I can live with all that. My main problem with this costume, though, comes with the belt. It's just way too thin. I do really like the idea of it being angled, and they even found a way to make the crest on the belt work by having it be much more subtle, but the belt itself needed to be thicker if you're going to replace the trunks. It's definitely not a bad suit by any means, and Tyler looks great in it, but with a few tweaks, you could get something special. The funny thing is, they proved they were capable of giving him a generational costume during flashbacks as he brought Max Fleischer's suit to life in the most spectacular ways possible. This right here is just about as close to perfection as you can get. I cannot believe that I got to see a costume this good in my lifetime. The spandex look finally returns for the first time in actual decades, and god, are we so much better off because of it. The simplicity of this design goes a long way to make the suit feel like it was actually made by Ma Kent, handcrafted with love and care to make Superman feel as approachable as possible. I also really love the colors they used for this costume, as it's unlike any other Superman suit we've seen in live action, so it stands out in history, all while making him feel as bright and vibrant as possible. Then there's that clean crest design with a striking outline that makes it stand out even more. And the trunks, oh my god, the trunks are everything. That is godly. If I had to change anything, I would make the belt black. I think it really completes the look that way, but I understand they're doing a one-to-one recreation of the Fleischer suit from the cartoon, so I get why they didn't, and I'm happy to let it slide. In a perfect world, he would have worn this suit for the entirety of the series as a whole, but I guess we're not allowed to have nice things. Season 2 did make some improvements to the main suit, most notably by making the padding more natural and changing up the boots, but it wasn't until Season 3 that we started to see more noticeable changes to people who don't hyperanalyze this stuff for a living. Most notably when it came to the crest, as it was finally fully textured. Freed from the confines of screen printing, that S-shield was looking better than ever with so much beautiful depth that made it stand out on screen. And they finally made it bigger, taking up even more room on the chest to drive home how super this man really is. That was bad, I'm sorry. The blue was even brightened too, to really make sure everything would come through on the screen more through all that color grading, which I really appreciated. Even if they did go a little too hard on the muscle printing, which brings things down a bit, but they never did truly find a right balance on that aspect. To their credit though, all of those muscles are very complementary with the show's style, as it isn't as noticeable in the series itself through all that color grading, so I should probably just stop doubting them. Season 4 is where things really get interesting though, as the costume goes through a ton of design changes that shouldn't work, but weirdly do for me. For starters, the blue is a lot darker, and you would think that I'd hate that, but it kinda works. I know I'm the world's biggest hypocrite for saying that, but this is supposed to be their own unique take on the return of Superman costume once he comes back from the Doomsday fight, and in that context, I like it. I also love the changes made to the crest to simplify it. It also pops really well against that darker blue, so that's a bonus. It still has the same problems as all the other costumes when it comes to the belt, but the reason I really like this suit is the texturing. All of the fake muscle padding has been toned down to highlight Tyler's build more, and it does a lot to complement him and make him feel more like Superman rather than a caricature of Superman. The most important important thing though is the fact that this suit is made up of tiny little S shields alternating, which I think looks sick as hell. It is such a small detail you can barely even notice on screen, but just knowing that extra amount of effort makes me appreciate it even more. Outside of that initial flashback suit, it never felt like they truly nailed Tyler's costume, so their placements are all over the place on here. There's definitely a way you could take elements from all of his suits to craft one perfect costume, but the show got canceled before we could ever have that growth, and I will never forgive them for it. Alright, we've been on a pretty interesting run lately. Let's see what's... God damn it! Why do I have to talk about The Flash? I never want to talk about The Flash. Oh god, that's right, they allegedly put Nic Cage in as Superman, so I guess I have to talk about him because it's technically live action, even though they just recreated him in CGI and he didn't shoot any of those scenes, but whatever. I'm bound to this contract I made with the devil to get views, so screw it. This look sucks. I have nothing good to say about it outside of the colors being decent, but you can't even tell because they're in this nightmarishly ugly looking movie. It's a shame too that this hideous CGI makes it look like the costume was spray painted directly onto his body with a logo that's far too big and chunky. And even in spite of that, the entire thing looks so awkwardly plastic. I can't even be happy for Nic Cage because they didn't use the scenes he shot. What are we doing here? And you know what? It. Let's include his unused costume from Superman Lives as well, because at least that's real and they tried something new. Even if it looks like it's made out of duct tape and Sharpie, but at least it's an original idea, which is something you won't find in The Flash. It is not an exaggeration to say that humanity is so much worse off because of this movie's existence. F tier, obviously, if you couldn't tell already. There's no way this is the same movie James Gunn called one of the best he's ever seen. Now that I've got that out of my system, I have to give The Flash some credit. That hurts to say. Despite all odds, Sasha Calle's Supergirl suit is genuinely great. It's the one original costume in this movie they managed to do a really good job with, especially when you take into account this is based on Laura Lane Kent's costume from the comics, and for a character who's only ever had 3 appearances, they did that look justice. I would even go as far as to say that it's the best archetype of the Cavill suit. They carry over that same texture, but the overall structure of the suit is completely different with the red shoulders and the rest of the costume blue by design. Even the lines on the costume help to accentuate her body and feel more intentional. I do think some red boots would help improve this look to balance out all the colors more, and, you know, Sasha Calle being in that suit does help make it look a lot better. Anytime I speak negatively on The Flash, just know it has nothing to do with her. She deserves so much better than whatever the hell that movie was, and her costume is an easy A tier for me. Okay, now that we can finally stop talking about The Flash as soon as humanly possible, after years of waiting to see a proper Superman again on the big screen whose head wasn't cut off or CGI'd all over, James Gunn finally saved us with a reboot that introduced the world to David Corenswet's Superman. To get the obvious out of the way, I adore this costume so much. I totally understand that this suit won't be for everyone. I certainly wish it didn't have the lines on the shoulders and the midsection, and an open neckline would be great, but it just works for me on every level, and if you don't agree, you're a coward. Even the collar, something I traditionally hated in the comics and oddly Fortnite, somehow looks good here. I don't get what kind of black magic they had to do to pull it off and make it work, but it actually does. Christopher Reeve famously said that the basic ingredient of Superman is that he's a friend.
What does Superman represent to people?
A friend.
He should always feel approachable and look like somebody you can easily get along with. I think it is so cool how this suit was designed to look like a uniform. It feels like a suit he'd put on every morning one leg at a time to go to work, and I love that aspect of it as it's such a small way to humanize him even more. Plus, the red, yellow, and blue have never looked better than this, as they are so proudly vibrant. The mark of a good superhero costume is that you can tell who they are from a distance, and this suit checks that box like crazy. I swear, you could see this costume from space, it's that good. It also helps that he has the best trunks on any Superman costume as it ties the entire design together. It honestly feels like this suit was designed around the trunks, and that is the right call and exactly how you make them work. I will always go to bat for the trunks because they are such a fundamental part of his costume as it makes him feel more approachable with this silly design to balance out the godly abilities. It is also intentional and puts the biggest smile on my face seeing David wear them. Every day I thank God he was able to convince Gunn to add them because I could not imagine seeing him with— oh my god. Oh, get that off the screen. That is horrifying. Ugh. I feel like I need to take a cold shower after seeing that. Never take trunks off the Superman suit again. They complete the whole look. These are the perfect length with a strong material to make them fit in in and a belt that balances the color scheme very well. If you're one of those cowardly Trunks haters, I'm afraid that we're just gonna have to catch and compromise you to a permanent end, because I don't understand how anyone can dislike a look this impactful. Even with all of that praise, my favorite thing about this suit is how it feels like a love letter to Superman as a whole. Every single design choice was pulled from a different era of the character to create something truly unique, all while honoring his history. Like how the collar is clearly pulled from the New 52, or how classic those trunks feel. But above all else, this is best reflected in the S shield, which I could talk about for hours on end. Using the Kingdom Come logo as a way to make that crest feel more alien and reflect the story of how the movie is basically a reverse Kingdom Come, but giving it the traditional colors to still make him distinctly the Superman was a genius idea. The yellow outline around it even calls back to his first visual adaptation in the Fleischer cartoons in a really cool full circle moment as he's remade for the modern day. I honestly think that this might be my favorite crest out of any Superman, which might be sacrilegious to say since it's a departure from the standard one, but that significance of what it represents means so much to me, and also it just looks so cool. I love this overall design more than people I know in real life and just how inspired the whole thing feels. And as I was writing this video, they even started filming Man of Tomorrow, so we got to see that they somehow found ways to improve it in the future. They make 3 subtle changes that go a long way to make this suit even better somehow. The first change comes with the collar. They made it go deeper with stronger lines to pronounce his neck more, and I think that does a lot to make the collar stand out and feel natural within the costume. I didn't love how rounded off it was in that first suit, as his neck just kind of falls out of it, whereas here it feels like it's supporting him more. The second are the changes to the logo. It is barely noticeable, but that crest is slightly more curved, and I think it does a lot to pronounce the S even more, but they also seemingly make it a little bigger on his costume, taking up more of that space, which I think is a great change. But by far, the biggest and best change they make to the suit in Man of Tomorrow is that it fits David's body so much better. It still has that natural look as a uniform you'd see Superman put on, but now it's much tighter and form-fitting to his body, so you can actually see that definition. Also, the longer hair is just straight up majestic. He looks incredible. Man of Tomorrow's costume department is knocking it out of the park so far, taking all of the feedback from David's first suit and improving on it, all while giving us a flawless war suit for Lex. God, I need this movie injected into my veins. I'm just gonna rank both of these suits as the same one because it's very much so an S tier. I adore this costume so much for how much of a loving tribute it is to Superman as a character. That brings us to our final costume to discuss, Millie Alcock's Supergirl. Pretty much just take everything I said about that Superman costume and apply it to Millie's suit. That should cover it, right? No? Okay, that's fine. I could talk more about that suit anyway because, hot take alert, I actually think the Supergirl costume is better than the Superman costume. It has all the pros of the Superman suit, but they learned from that costume to make even more improvements. Most notably in the fact that they tightened up the costume. It just fits Millie better than David's did, all while allowing room for those creases to add tangibility, but it goes a long way to make that costume feel like hers, as it's uniquely fitted to her body. Even those oh so very controversial lines feel more intentional as they accentuate the costume and flow into the belt, guiding your eyes in a more calculated way. Also, maybe it's just the way Superman was shot, but I think they made the yellow parts of the crest more saturated here, and if so, I really like that. All of those colors are just bursting off the screen and do a lot to immediately catch your eye. As for the only part of this costume unique to her, the skirt, they nailed it. Although, I know for a fact David could pull that off. The length and material are just right, but that belt is my favorite part of the costume. That shiny gold jumps out at you and matches really well with the trim of the boots, but it's the size of the belt that I like the most. It is unapologetically big and taking up the perfect amount of space, with texturing that adds to the sci-fi aesthetic of her character and the movie itself. It's a huge improvement on the belt from the end of Superman, as it's much more distinct and fits the costume better as its defining feature, but it's even better with the trench coat. I swear, if you put a trench coat on any costume, it adds 100 aura points. This fit on the poster is the best she's ever looked. If she doesn't wear it by the end of the movie, I'm going to fight someone. It might just be some random guy in the theater, but I'm still gonna fight them. Even if she doesn't, this costume is gorgeous and absolutely belongs in the S tier. I cannot think of a single thing I'd want to change about it. And there we have it. That's every live-action Superman and Supergirl costume ranked. I hope. There's so many of them, I probably missed one, and if so, please yell at me in the comments. Oh, and now that we're done, let me go back and actually rank Kirk Alyn as a reward for those of you who actually stayed until the end of the video. It's a solid B tier, which is incredibly generous for the 40s since they pulled this off before any worthwhile invention was created. But, now that we've gone through every costume, I want to do something special and design my perfect Superman suit. Take everything I've learned going through his live-action history of what worked and what hasn't to do something historic and create a design that will stand the test of time. Okay, first let's start by changing the color here. Maybe add in some trunks over there. We can use this material in place of that. Get a different logo for the chest. Tighten up the costume there for sure. And bam! Oh shit, that's just Batman. Oh god, how did that happen? Well, I clearly messed something up, so while I try and fix that, why don't you just let me know down below your favorite Superman and Supergirl costumes? I would genuinely love to hear what everyone has to say and continue the conversation down below. And while you're at it, make sure to give this video a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. If you don't do it, you're gonna be forced to wear the Returns costume for the rest of your life, which is a fate worse than death, so you may as well just subscribe to save yourself from that ugly ass embarrassment.